Hello, everybody. Halloween 2025 is upon us. Prepare to get frightened. We're going to cover a topic called human monsters. So this is a little more mundane kind of evil than we'll be covering under zombies and elsewhere. No supernatural stuff. It's human on human crime, baby. First of all, we got AC Nicholas over here. This man is a towering font of knowledge. And then I have the amazing CF Roberts, who is a savant of cinema. And then I'm Henry Covert, and I'm an okay guy, but Mr. Roberts has wanted to tell us about one that's really I didn't even think of, and then he presented. I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? So go for it, sir.
Okay. Well, this movie is one that I first saw back maybe 40 years ago
Wow.
and only recently dug it up and got another look at it. My cousin and I rented this movie back in the 80s, I think. And we just watched it at random one night, and we were both kind of really taken aback by it because it's one of those ones. It's purported to be a true story. It seems to be, but I don't know. This is Honeymoon Killers. It was made in 1970, but it doesn't feel like it. This is kind of around the time New Hollywood really started breaking in, and you started getting the first rumblings from the Scorseses and the Spielbergs
The De
and
Palmas.
the De Palmas, the Coppolas. This is not that. This was directed by Leonard Castle, and it feels like an incredible throwback. It was shot in black and white.
Yeah.
It kind of feels in a lot of ways like an old exploitation pot boiler.
It reminds me of something weird stuff.
Yeah,
Classic.
it's kind of in the something weird vein.
Yeah.
Some kind of sordid melodrama. This stars Shirley Stoller as Martha Beck and Tony Lobianco as Ray Fernando or Fernandez. But yeah, Martha is a very wrapped, unhappy kind of head nurse in a nursing
Nurses
home.
rule. Go ahead.
Huh?
I said nurses rule. Go ahead.
Nurses rule.
Sorry.
Well, where's the lie? She is just a real, she's like a battleship in human form, and she kind of runs her detail like with an iron fist. She catches a young man and a young woman on her staff together in a room. I don't think there's anything untoward going on, but she acts like there is. And I think one gets fired and one gets reprimanded.
Mm.
And what you find out eventually is, of course, that she's extremely frustrated, and she's living in a house with her elderly mother.
Mm.
And has this friend who's kind of ditzy and I don't know. And she's lonely, but she gets steered toward these Lonely Hearts ads, and she hooks up with Ray, who is kind of this suave Latino guy. And they hook up and they get together very quickly and like a house on fire. Yeah, and, fairly wild about one another, although he's a little sketchy, and you later find out why. And what you find out basically is he's kind of a con artist, and he basically keeps hooking up with these, aging widows and pretty much taking them for all they've got and, swindling them. And she's very bothered by this. She's very bothered by him professing any kind of love to anyone who's not her. But he pulls her into his scams, and she appears to these ladies as his sister. And so they carry on this facade. And he does this whole thing where he gets engaged to these women or gets married to these women and whatever else. And the whole time he's bilking them. Trouble is, once Martha comes into the picture, things get very weird because she is not good on him being with anyone, even in like a pretense setting, being with anyone who's not her.
Right.
And she gets very possessive. She gets very violent, and she ends up killing a lot of these women.
There's the catch.
And, which, if you want to cut things down to the final analysis, she's basically just accelerating his job for him. She's knocking off these.
Has he killed anybody, or is she the first one?
No, she's not killing any. He's not killing anybody.
He hasn't killed anybody until she comes along.
Not till she comes along.
And doesn't she get
and
mad?
And even then, she's still doing most of it.
The old lady makes her really mad, and she kills her kind of in a rage.
It's been a while. Oh yeah, and it's brutal.
It goes from there.
It's fairly tame as far as these movies go, but at the same time, I mean, she is an unhinged character, and she goes off just jealous, but after a string of these ladies, the last one that he decides he wants to bilk is this is a little younger than most of the women he goes after. And she's, I think, a widowed or divorced woman who has a daughter. And Martha, as his quote unquote sister, ends up getting some alone time with with this woman, and finds out that she and Ray have fooled around, and she is now pregnant.
Oh no.
And she flies into a rage, murders her, is burying her down in the basement, and then I think drags the little girl down into the basement, kills her, and then walks upstairs while Ray is burying these two, gets on the phone and calls the police, and basically rats the two of them out.
Ray and our heroine?
Yes, Ray and Martha. Martha rats herself and Ray out, and basically she just can't go on because Ray knocked this woman up.
Right.
And it pretty much ends with them both in prison, and then she gets this just somewhere along the lines of the trial or the prison term or something. She gets this letter from Ray, still basically professing his love to her and saying how much he cares about her. And then there's a postscript afterwards. This whole thing is done in just kind of really raw. It's
a true crime movie.
It is. Yeah,
and it looks trendy.
It's done in very much this documentary style. Mm-hmm. And you just see kind of a graphic running, over the prison bars, that the two of them basically got the chair, and it was like 1951 in Sing Sing, and they both got electrocuted.
Are you saying this movie took place in the 40s?
Yeah, 40s, 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's not a true story, or is it?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Okay, it is a true story.
It's the Lonely Hearts Killers, right?
Yeah. They play it out like a true story. So,
in real life, were they called the Lonely Hearts, or is that a different?
Yes, the Lonely Heart Killers. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't called the Lonely Hearts Killers in the movie, but they were in real life.
Well, you made a comment about the new Hollywood, and I'm sure you probably know this, but for the audience's edification, Martin Scorsese was the original director of this film, and he was too artsy for Leonard Castle, the producer, so he's like, I'm going to do it myself. So Martin got fired.
We gotta make this into a cash cow, and I guess Castle on the whole was actually not terribly proud of it.
I don't know how he got the cast or anything. I mean, LaBianca was all over the place when we were kids.
Yeah.
I mean, he was all over TV, movies. You know,
Yeah.
you couldn't avoid that guy. I quite like him, and he's got a
Mhm.
lot of range.
Mhm.
This character he plays is kind of a caricature, but he sells it. You know,
Yeah.
he's kind of like a self-styled Latin ladies man. You know, he is doing illegal things. You know, he's bilking people out of money, but what's her name? Martha escalates for sure. And
Yeah.
I love the tension there between them because I mean the way I watched it, and we could have done that on Strange Love Stories. I mean, I actually think he's sincere in that letter at the end, at least within
Yeah.
the story. Maybe not in real life.
Seems to be. Yeah.
Like she fell in love with him despite the fact that he was a con artist and wooing other women, and she was
Mhm.
lonely. She was overweight. People thought she was unattractive. She was very hard, like a Nurse Ratched kind of nurse. He made her feel beautiful, you know, and that's a big deal in real life. So I mean, a story like this is really amplified. But when she starts killing, I think he's like completely shocked out of his mind.
Yeah.
But it's the reverse. He loves her, and so okay, you know, and they accept each other being criminals.
Yeah. At least until he crosses that one line
Oh,
of
he right. He
getting
gets some.
getting that lady
See, that's where he
impregnated.
fucks up. Literally fucks up. Yeah, but I think he's remorseful. But he doesn't. He
Yeah.
doesn't really seem intelligent enough to put his thoughts in order about this stuff. He seemed like
Probably not.
I'm going with the flow, Martha. We're going to get some more women. And the thing about Bianco's look is, you know, he's a cool looking dude. He's Italian. He's got genuinely black hair, very slight receding hairline. I mean, much more hair here than I do. But then he has to have more when he poses, so
Yeah.
he closes up a little bouffant wig here, and I was like, that's hilarious. But
Fake pompadour.
yeah, I will say I believe LaBianca's masterwork as an actor is in Larry Cohen's God Told Me To. That's just my opinion.
I agree.
That movie is one of Cohen's very best movies, and
I agree.
really underrated.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's one of the most important, overlooked science fiction horror films like ever made. But so everybody go look for God Told Me To. I don't know if it's on Tubi now. We'll find it out. I don't have it yet on Blu-ray. I did get Q, the Winged Serpent. I always relate those two together. Cohen is I don't think we covered much Cohen on this channel, but man, he's
He's
in
a force unto himself.
yes, he's in our hearts. I think have we covered anything? I don't think we have.
We should do a Cohen symposium. What the strength that Cohen had was he had the knack for hooks for movies.
Yeah.
He had filing cabinets in his mansion where he had all these movie ideas like Q, The Stuff, Cellular, he wrote, Phone Booth.
The Apartment. Or no, is it called The Apartment? No. The one with Eric Roberts is called The Accident? No.
The Ambulance.
Ambulance.
That was
he wrote
yeah.
Bestseller.
That was a hoot, man.
Because he was actually friends with Stan Lee in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's actually one of the few things that Stan Lee is hypes that actually is true. Yeah. Very little that Stan Lee hypes has actually happened, except in his noggin. But him and Larry Cohen actually were neighbors in Beverly Hills. When Stan split New York to go out there and live the swanky lifestyle, doing nothing, and he got to be in the same neighborhood as Larry Cohen. And Larry Cohen, you know, he got rich off television, got this mansion, but he still couldn't seem to get enough money to make the movies the way he wanted them. So he just went guerrilla. Like, I don't know why he couldn't get better and more investors. Because I mean,
what an impressive guy though for plot ideas. And I totally agree with you, Henry, that God Told Me To is a masterpiece. Just a stone cold.
It makes my blood run cold just thinking about it.
It's a good
one.
one.
It's a beautiful movie.
That scene where he starts to realize what he is and he goes into the pool hall with all the black dudes, and it's just like, I am the savior now, but you know, get out of my way. But that's the classic story of the man who's on a journey to find someone, and it turns up being himself. That's exactly what happens in this one. You know, he's a detective searching for a dude, and turns out he's the dude. Black Caesar, Hell Up in Harlem, the Tommy Gibbs saga, I think is some of the finest blaxploitation. We've not covered those on this channel.
Well, I mentioned Bestseller, which he wrote but didn't direct. The one with Brian Dennehy and James Woods as the hitman, and Dennehy's writing his story. That's a Cohen.
He also wrote Phone Booth. Which the movie wasn't that great, but I haven't actually read the script printed, and it's great.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way it's directed, but
no, you know what it is? It was the hook, and they didn't really handle his hook well. He came up with the plot. This movie's going to be shot entirely from this guy held down in a phone booth.
But they tried to make it look all glitzy like a Hollywood movie, and it just
that was Schumacher.
Yeah, Schumacher as a filmmaker, I have
what can you do?
With. He did one. I think he accidentally directed one movie I like, but to be honest, I can't remember which one it is.
I did want to. I learned a trivial fact years ago because I love the Honeymoon Killers guys. I do. I mean, really, it's raw and primitive, and it really works in the way. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize until a couple of years ago that there is a 2006 remake of that.
Oh, wow.
Starring John Travolta as a cop, Jared Leto as Fernandez, and Selma Hayek as Martha Beck. Ooh. And I didn't even know this movie.
I only like one of those actors, and she's totally wrong for that part.
Absolutely. I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it. I didn't know it existed.
Selma Hayek has not had a lonely heart one inch of her life.
and Selma Hayek is not physically the same as the real Martha Beck or Shirley Stoller.
Right. I mean, I do think Selma Hayek does try to make movies when she's a producer that are about people who are like frumpier than her. And like when she played Frida and tried to kind of get frumpy. But
it's funny. I saw the premiere of that movie at the Toronto International Film Festival, and I thought she's going to get an Oscar nomination. She sure did. Because she's terrific in that movie.
I didn't know about that remake, so how do I access this? Do I go on YouTube or what?
I have no idea where it is, if it is anywhere online.
That's insane. What do you think? You told me what you think, AC.
Mm-hmm. I like the movie.
Yes, I like it too. I first saw it. I rented it in 1992. I lived literally across the street from a Cockbuster Video, and I would go ahead and rent from them all the time. That one caught my eye for some reason. I knew who Tony LaBianca was, but that's really all I knew about it. And I liked it. One of the reasons I was curious about it is the Martha character, accidentally or not, reminded me of Crazy Fat Ethel, which I'd always seen the trailers for on TV when I was a kid, and they freaked me out. So I rented that. Criminally Insane, it's also called.
Right.
Criminally Insane, I watched that, and then I'm like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and watch the lighter version here, the slightly bigger budget version with Shirley Stoller. And, Shirley Stoller was in Lena Wertmuller, Seven Beauties, which is quite a fine movie. And she didn't really do, according to I was just reading about her, she did a lot of small roles in movies. You get her
she's not bad.
No, she's a really good actress. I was going to say she had any more iconic parts. She's in Clute in a small role, which I think Clute is an American giallo, and I love it. She's in The Deer Hunter, small part in The Deer Hunter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a bunch of these, man, and a lot of television. Oh, she played on Edge of Night for a while. Soap opera.
Oh, wow.
Starting in 1980. She's in Frankenhooker. I do kind of remember that now.
Oh, wow.
Favorite of mine.
She's in Malcolm X in a small role. But she died in 1999. She was 69. So she was 41 when this movie was made. And what I just read is she began performing in 1955. So she was born in 1929. So at age 16, she began performing in avant-garde theater in New York.
Wow.
The Living Theater. Everybody's heard of that. I don't know a lot about it. It's
wow.
She was a big part of that throughout.
She was in the Living Theater?
Yeah. And another theater,
crap.
another one I hadn't heard of, La Mama. So it's like these experimental companies with these theater spaces. She says she had become a key underground player in New York by the time she earned film fame in 1970 at age 41.
Wow.
You go, girl. And I think, it's sad that the character's so evil, but I do think that movie does get across that kind of feeling somebody like that has. Because, I've had family members, I've had girlfriends, wife, who struggle with weight problems and self-esteem and stuff. And, it really, sometimes, it's really, as a guy who it's kind of weird and short, I totally relate. It's kind of like when you finally find somebody that thinks you're attractive, you're like, whoa, baby. Of course, you end up getting hurt. She kind of went with it, like, oh, this guy really adores me, but he's got to be totally loyal to me. even though he's wooing other women. And who wouldn't be jealous if you were her? I mean, come on. She knew what she was getting into. So each of them had this uh, broken moral compass. But it's really entertaining. I think the movie, it gets dark at times and it gets funny at times, and sometimes you don't expect it to get funny or dark when it does. So, you have any closing thoughts on the Honeymoon Killers, Chuck?
Well, you can, if you got HBO Max, or they just call it Max now, you can watch it.
All right, I bet Tubi will acquire it sometime in the near future.
Hopefully Tubi gets it.
It's
Yeah.
always worth it. It's always worth it. And they don't keep movies forever. I mean, some they do, but so if something like that comes up, jump on it tonight.
Yes, indeed. If you enjoy what you heard on this show, we'd love to have you back. So please hit the notify, hit the subscribe, and join us again with this panel of experts on cinema on Deep Images.
Thank you so much. We're going to be back with more human monsters and Halloween. We might not be back with more human monsters before Halloween.
It's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past.
Hello, everybody. We're back with Deep Images. It is our Halloween 2025 series. So this topic is human monsters. Everybody knows one. There's probably sociopaths at all of your jobs or in your family or wandering the streets that you bump into and just barely elude, disaster and peril. So we're going to talk about movies that cover that wide, run that wide gamut. So I'm Henry Covert, and this guy over here to this side, I think, is Mr. Bill Mulligan. He is the co-founder of this channel. And we've got AC Nicholas, who is the latest incredible protege, and Justin Cotton, CF Roberts, co-hosts. Justin's in Australia and Chuck is in Arkansas. So we've got a lot of flavor there. And then, last but never least, Robert Seghetti, brilliant film commentator. So here we go. So we're going to talk about one that Justin picked out. It's a classic horror movie, but it doesn't have any supernatural. It's just the human monsters.
Yeah, thanks. And it's strangely a film I'd always heard about, particularly the first opening stanza, 25 minutes of it, the concept behind it, but I'd never actually seen it until about a week ago. It's the original When a Stranger Calls from 1979. There is an updated version remake, which I think is about 2006, which I've also seen, oddly, before I saw the original. So I saw the remake about 3 months ago, and I quite enjoyed that. But I found it was very, apart from the central concept, it was quite different from the original. So the remake's on Netflix. The original I watched is directed by Fred Walton, who also was a co-writer of the script. And it's, as I say, it's best known for the content of the first 23 minutes of the film. It's about a 95-minute film. And it did very well at the box office, because I read that the budget was only a couple of $1 million in those days, but it made like 25 million. So you can see that on a scale, it did very well with its box office, although mixed reviews critically. But the critics seemed to love the first 23 minutes. And that was where the central character, a young babysitter by the name of Jill Johnson, goes to Dr. Mandrakis and his wife's house. The opening scene's quite effective if you like horror films, because it shows you Jill walking down this tree-lined street with these fluorescent lamps and a lot of fog. So it's kind of effective first shot or so, first minute or so of the film. And then she's going to babysit for Dr. Mandrakis and his wife are going out to dinner and possibly a movie later. And they say the kids are upstairs. They try not to wake them because they've had a bad cold, but just check on them from time to time, perhaps. And then leaves Jill alone in the house. Promptly, the phone starts ringing. And of course, it's been 1979. It's the old cord phone with the dial.
Yeah.
The phone keeps coming, and at first there's no one on the other line, but then a voice starts saying, "Have you checked the children?" in a sort of creepy British accent. And she's walking around the house getting freaked out because the phone keeps ringing every 10 minutes or so. Eventually she calls the police, and the police try to say, we get these phone calls all the time, it's probably just some crank. But when she rings up the police a second time, they say, try and keep them on the line long enough so we can try and trace the call. And anyway, the phone calls keep coming, and eventually they become a bit more substantive, and the voice talks about how I want to be covered in your blood, and by this stage she's really freaked out, and doesn't know what to do. She's calling her own friends, wondering and trying to ring the restaurant to see if the Mandrakeses are coming home soon. Then the phone rings another time, and she yells down the line, "Stop it! This is crazy!" And then an urgent police officer's voice comes on the line and says, "Jill, you better get out of the house. The phone call's been traced. It's coming from inside the house."
That's one of the most classic lines of any horror movie in my lifetime.
Yeah, and that's probably what the film is best known for, is that actual line and the tracing of the phone call. So she, in a mad panic, she rushes to the door, tries to yank it open, but of course the key chain, the lock chain is still on the door. And she sees at the top of the stairs a door slowly open and a shadow sort of leaning out, looking at her. And then she quickly yanks the door open, and she's confronted by this face looking at her, which is sort of this gnarled face of a police detective. So the next scene is the police going through the house. The head detective is Detective John Clifford, played by Charles Durning.
Where's John Saxon?
They got a Durning instead of a Saxon.
Oh well.
Yeah. And also, by the way, Carol Kane plays Jill Johnson.
I love Carol Kane.
Yeah. The psycho is played by Tony Beckley, British actor, who I think it was his last film, and he was also what was that Michael Caine film?
Get Carter.
That film.
Get Carter.
He was in Get Carter. That's right. Yeah, he's in that film. Yeah. So the police are explaining what's happened, and they say that at some point a British seaman who's only been in the country for like a week has broken into the upstairs bedroom, and he's killed the children. You see the children being taken out of the house with body bags, and the parents, the Mandrakeses, are in the lounge, crying, etc., as you'd expect. And then the film skips ahead 7 years, and what's happened is that Charles Durning's character, Detective John Clifford, goes to this insane asylum where the convicted psychopath, which is by the name of Curt Duncan, played by Tony Beckley, had escaped from the insane asylum. And then John Clifford is also, by this stage, he's no longer a detective. He's retired, but he's become like a sort of a private detective. And he's been contacted by Dr. Mandrakis, who says, well, this is just, it's just so unfair that the security has allowed this guy to escape 7 years after the fact. No justice for my children.
Right.
And he hires John Clifford to try and track down Curt Duncan. The next scene, you see Curt Duncan, so there's no mystery really what he looks like. And we're only about 35 minutes into the film by now. But he's at a bar somewhere in the downtown area, and I think it was supposed to be downtown LA. And he's in a sort of divey bar, and he tries to chat up this lady, Tracy, who's played by Colleen Dewhurst. And she's just sort of a barfly, sort of a frumpy sort of looking woman who...
I've never seen her get a kid on in a movie. Wow.
Doesn't really want to be bothered, and sort of tries to move away from him, this sort of creepy guy in the trench coat, Curt Duncan. But he's trying to be as nice as possible to her and buy her a drink, and she doesn't want to know. And eventually she kind of loses her temper with him and slaps him away, and that catches the attention of these two ruffian sort of guys who are playing pool, and they then go and try and get rid of Curt Duncan and threaten to throw him out of the bar. He spits at one of them, I think, and ends up getting beaten up. Tracy, in the meantime, is standing back looking a bit shell-shocked. He didn't really intend this to happen, And later on, Curt Duncan follows her back to her apartment nearby and somehow comes up the stairwell. So so that when she opens the door, he's just standing there. At first she's nice to him and apologizes and say, look, I feel bad. I didn't really intend this to happen. What happened to you? You've been badly beaten up. But eventually the way he talks, and he seems very desperate to get to know her and wants to have coffee with her the next day, she sort of quietly tries to get rid of him and said, the phone call that just rang, that was my boyfriend. He'll be here in 20 minutes. Yeah, so she does manage to get rid of him. In the meantime, John Clifford somehow manages to track Carl Duncan down to this dive bar in downtown LA, and is then told that he'd had an encounter with Tracy at the bar the night before, and from there he manages to track down Tracy and meet with her at her apartment, and he explains to her that 7 years ago Curt Duncan had actually murdered these two children at a rich guy's house in Beverly Hills, and actually killed the children with his bare hands. There was no murder weapon. Goodness. He said, this is the sort of guy we're dealing with. So of course she seems shell shocked by this news. But she does agree to the suggestion by John Clifford that they'll be try and set up Carl Duncan so he can be tracked down by meeting him at the bar the following night. So the following night, Tracy goes to the bar, is drinking alone with the usual bartender and so forth. But eventually she gets up and leaves because Carl Duncan fails to show. She goes back to her apartment and contacts John Clifford, and he meets her at the apartment again, and he says, well, you did your best, thank you for helping, and leaves. But you're aware that she's been watched, so there's good suspense all through the film and some of these scenes. And she's been watched because, of course, Curt Duncan is hiding in her closet and then eventually emerges when she's alone, but it still doesn't really seem as though he's intending any particular violence against her, and simply just wants to get to know her and meet up with her the next day. She screams, and that attracts John Clifford, who runs back to the apartment because he's still nearby. Curt Duncan escapes down a fire escape. So typical of many American films, it's a bit of a trope, jumping out a window and running, and particularly in horror films or thrillers, jumping out of a back window and then running down this fire escape into a back alley, knocking over a trash can on the way, and you hear a cat go, So anyway, he chases after, and you've got this kind of ridiculous situation where you've got this sort of overweight ex-police detective, John Clifford, and he's trying to keep up desperately with this fugitive who's much slimmer and suggested probably faster, running away into the night. But he manages to track down Curt Duncan into this warehouse of some sort, and he's hiding in a crate or nearby, breaks out of the crate, runs away. There's a bit of a chase scene where John Clifford's trying to chase after Curt Duncan and eventually gets away, and you see him hiding near the dock somewhere, and there's a bit of a weird soliloquy where he's talking about, I'm invisible, you can't see me, nobody can see me, I'm invisible, sort of saying this over and over because the guy's clearly insane. And there's another scene too, just before this, where he's in a public bathroom somewhere, and he's naked, and he's looking at the mirror, and he's visualizing what he's, you don't see it graphically, but you're visualizing the thing where he was in the bedroom 7 years ago with the Mandrakers as children, and then sort of starts crying. But you almost get the sense that he's got some sort of remorse for what he did, but that doesn't prevent the fact that he's a psychopath. So basically, the upshot is John Clifford's lost. The trail's gone cold. He confides in his an ex-police buddy who was on the scene 7 years ago at the Mandrakers' house, and he says, "Look, I don't think you should be trying to do this. You're effectively acting as a hired assassin."
And who's played that guy is Ron O'Neal, Superfly.
Ron O'Neal, yeah, and big, tall, dark guy. That's right. Yep. So he says to Ron O'Neal, "Well, how would you? What would your reaction be if you were the parents of these children, the Mandrakeses? So Ron O'Neal's character does agree to try and help him, but he says, "Well, unfortunately, the trail's gone cold." The next day, you see Curt Duncan walking the streets, and he looks almost like a sort of a homeless person. But he sees a bit of newspaper which refers to Jill Johnson's character, because she's become some sort of public figure in some sort of academic sense. So he sees her name on this newspaper, and that recalls 7 years ago, and he's able then to somehow to the film doesn't go into details, but somehow he's then able to track her down. So you then fast forward to the next night. Jill's character, she's now married with kids herself, and her husband Stephen's got a promotion, so they go out for dinner to celebrate his promotion. And history repeats. He's leaving the kids with Sharon, a babysitter. While they're at dinner,
babysitter.
Yeah, while they're at dinner at this flash restaurant, a phone call comes through for her, and the waiter says, someone wants you on the phone. She answers the phone, and there's this creepy British accented Curt Duncan voice saying, "Have you checked the children yet?" And so she then freaks and panics, and there's an awful scene at the restaurant where everyone's crowded around. What's wrong with this woman? And she says, "We've got to get home. We've got to get the police. It's Curt Duncan. He's at our home." And so they race back home with the police in tow, but everything's fine. It's sort of building towards a climax, and Jill is aware that Curt Duncan's around and probably knows where she lives. And so the police agree to watch her house. And also Ron O'Neill's character then contacts John Clifford and says, "Oh, well, we suspect that he's back on the scene, Curt Duncan, because he's rang the original babysitter from 7 years ago, the Mandrake."
He's in the house. He's always in the house.
Yeah, well, he seems to be an expert in breaking into places, because he also broke into the first house, but also Tracy's apartment downtown as well. But anyway, so Curt Duncan, John Clifford tries to ring the house the next night, but can't get through because the line is dead. So he immediately grabs a taxi and heads over there. In the meantime, Jill's husband, Stephen, thinks everything's going to be okay because he's got a shotgun next to the bed. Jill goes down she hears something, so she goes downstairs to check if, what's going on. She thought she heard a sound in the house. But when she goes back upstairs, she checks on the kids. They're still fine. And she gets into bed, but she sees that the closet door is half open. And then she's looking at this ominous-looking half-open closet door, and Stephen's in the bed next to her. But she hears this voice saying, "I had to come back. I've been watching you, or thinking of you these last 7 years, and then I saw you were around. I had to come back." So she freaks out, but then she suddenly sees this figure turn to her, that's lying next to her in the bed, and it's not Stephen at all. It's Curt Duncan. He then tries to attack her, and he lurches across. Yeah, that's a bit of a trope as well, but he lurches across the. Well, maybe it wasn't a trope back then, but it has since been probably copied in many films.
Yes.
And he lunges across the bed at her and across the room, and just then you hear shots ring out, and you think, well, maybe Stephen's there with the gun, but in fact it's the overweight ex-police detective John Clifford saves the day, and he's fired 2 shots into Curt Duncan, and he lies back dead. Meantime, they hear a groaning from the closet. John Clifford goes and opens the door, and Stephen falls out unconscious. So that's kind of wraps up the film. There's not much more to it than that. And it's a fairly tight film in terms of not much plot complexity and not much characterization, you have to say. But pretty good acting throughout.
Real good.
I think Tony Beckley was excellent as the psychopath in the film. But as I said at the opening, it's really the opening 23 minutes for which the film is most effective, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And it was totally original, of course, when it first came out. It says on Wiki it was based on some fable of the man upstairs, which related to a babysitter. So I think the writer-director Fred Walton probably based it off that. I found it pretty effective. Yeah, I knew what was going to happen. If I hadn't seen it before, I would have probably found it scarier than I did.
Yeah. I saw it the first time it was on network television. I don't think it was caught much. And yeah, it was really scary. After Halloween, I think it wasn't a slasher, but I think it definitely was kind of influenced by that kind of suspense, that more modern, especially with the babysitter in the house. And the in the house is such a cliche, and obviously the Scream movie parodied it. It really did in horror movies starting Black Christmas. The guy was in the house too, and that's not only. It's not so much the twist that he's the phone caller, it's the twist that he's the killer, because he's actually the boyfriend of the lovely Olivia Hussey. So this guy's like up in the attic doing all this mischievous shit, but when he's calling Margot Kidder keeps answering, and he'll say crude things, and she'll say even cruder things. And then that one, John Saxon does show up. So John Saxon should have come into this movie and pounded that guy because he knows martial arts like Enter the Dragon. He's a real deal. So I mean, I liked that movie. It seems kind of, I don't know, not lightweight, but maybe medium weight for that genre period. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think medium weight. It's a very basic storyline. I enjoyed it, but the thing is, I wouldn't put it in my top 5 or top 3 horror films of all time, which are probably my top 2 are probably The Exorcist and Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. There's not much characterization. That you can't really feel any sympathy for the psychopath, obviously, but it's almost like they're trying to hint at the fact he might feel some remorse for the fact that he can't help what he is,
right?
At some point, ultimately, he just got these driving factors, and even when he gets beaten up at the pub downtown, you don't really feel any sympathy for him.
I was scared for Carol Kane. That I had already seen Carol Kane in Taxi, though. I was in love with her, madly in love with her. It was the same year. I was obsessed with Carol Kane, man. She's still fine. She's 73, man. And you know what? She plays on Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, and she's 73 now. But she's still trying to keep her kind of pixie-ish look, and fairly well. But she's playing a character who's like 450 years old. So she kind of is young and sexy still, sort of, within the character. I mean, but yeah, I like her.
Not to be confused with Carole King, of course.
No, Carol Kane's not a great songwriter, but she is a real good actress. She always played really weird, eccentric characters. When I was growing up, it's like everybody that I knew who were nerdy wanted her to be like your girlfriend, you know, and because I might have a shot with Carol Kane. But then I look back and I'm looking at her as she looked in that thing 79. I wouldn't have had a shot in hell with her. Jesus Christ, way out of my league. But she seemed approachable.
So the psycho, they explore him a little bit. I mean, it's not completely one-dimensional, and he's trying to get some sort of human connection, I think, because he becomes a drifter, even though he's apparently only been before he did this, he was only in the country for a week, and then he spent the next 7 years in an insane asylum. So he gets out and he's like a homeless bum, and he's trying to form some sort of human connection with Tracy. But then it's sort of unclear how there's never explained how he became what he was, and whether he had any past in his previous country like this as well is not explained.
See, it's not an Italian movie. In Italy, you would have you'd hear like a little bell, and you'd see the flashback of some horrible childhood.
Yeah, there's no flashbacks or anything like that. And the detective tries to look into that when he's first hired by the Mandrake, Dr. Mandrake, as he goes to the insane asylum and speaks to the nurse and can you give me any clues about his background? And she says it's all in the file. It's all in the file. So she's totally kind of uncooperative.
Right.
And he kind of blasts her for that.
Didn't this movie have a sequel that was like kind of ridiculous to have a sequel?
Yes, it did. Yeah. And it was on Showtime. And
wasn't Carol Kane in it?
She was there, and Durning was in it too.
But it's years later, or was it a recent sequel?
Oh, it was 93, I think, or something. It was called When a Stranger Calls Back.
Oh, I thought it was called Again.
And I just want to comment on this movie for our younger viewers here. You needed to be there to see the excitement over this movie because it was released right in the heart of the first Gesundheit slasher cycle after Halloween.
Right.
And it's a good-looking studio film. Right. And Columbia sold it with a TV trailer, which basically told you what happens in the first 23 minutes, which is this is the urban legend of the calls are coming in from inside the house. If you check the kid.
Like Jan Brunwald collected all this urban legend.
And I remember seeing it, and I thought, wow, Fred Walton, I'll talk a little bit more in a second here about him, but the first 23 minutes are very suspenseful, very well done. And I had that nagging feeling that they couldn't keep it up, and they didn't. And it's because Walton did this as a short originally called The Sitter, and that's what got him this gig. Oh. And it plays to me very lopsided, like two movies.
Sounds like Act 2 is kind of a drag or a slow burn.
Act 2 is a real drag. It's got the brilliant build-up, and you just know that they're not going to sustain it. And they don't.
Yeah.
It just...
See, that's because it's a Hollywood movie. If this were a Giallo,
I
Act
know.
2, you start going all kinds of bonkers. You find out who he is, and then you'll find out why he was like that. And then by the third act, oh my God, he's got a stack of naked women killed.
Walt was
Having said that,
talented
it wasn't
guy. He
boring, I don't think.
retired like
Go
in the
ahead, Justin.
90s. And my favorite of his films is Rosary Murders, which is an Elmore Leonard mystery novel.
I don't know.
The Rosary Murders didn't do well. Donald Sutherland plays a priest in Detroit, and Charles Durning is like an older priest, and there's this killer running around, and it's based on a series of mysteries by a Catholic priest who left the priesthood and became a mystery writer. They were the Father Kinzel books. He wrote many of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I think it's Walton's best.
Yeah,
film.
My mom probably saw it.
Most reviewers have slagged it off at the time and still slag it off. It doesn't really have much of a cult, but I find it very interesting because you have a bunch of stuff going on here. You have the seal of the confessional, and Sutherland is the priest. He's trying to solve the murder, and there's this reporter, I believe, played by Belaski. Was that Bonnie Belaski? And they kind of insinuate that they were boyfriend and girlfriend before he became a priest, and maybe as an affair. And he does it pretty well. It's actually kind of funny too, so pretty good. And then Walton did April Fool's Day, which the cult of that is rising.
Yeah, it's okay. My ex-wife loved it. Yeah.
And then he bummed around a little bit, did a lot of TV, and it played on Showtime, When a Stranger Calls Back, which, as we know from When a Stranger Calls, the conceit in that was the killer says, I'm invisible, right? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. And in the sequel, I'm not going to spoil this because it's in the movie, he is literally invisible at one point because he body paints himself to match the wallpaper.
This is one thing I remember about that.
Yeah, you remember. That's the only thing I really remember of that movie, other than Durning and Kane show up.
Starts making a living as a performance artist.
Right, he is. And Jill Sholin from The Stepfather is the girl. She's and like her. But again, this is, you guys hit it right on the nose. It's medium grade. But you had to be there when this was a sensation because the marketing campaign was terrific, even though they basically gave away the first 23 minutes.
Yeah, everybody knows the opening of Scream, but they don't really know where it came from.
Yeah, and Scream does it too. Scream parrots it or homages.
But damn, that's cool, Justin. Thank you for taking us down memory lane because I definitely remember this being on TV when I was a little munchkin.
Check it out. Yeah.
Anyone else seen this or have any thoughts?
Oh yeah.
Before we close up,
you had to go see it if you were back in the '80s. The commercial was on all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And this was a big deal. And what year did it come out?
79.
Oh, 79. Yeah, 80, 79. So this would have been like my last year in high school. And everybody was talking about that because that was an old urban legend. That was a campfire story.
Yeah.
And so it was likable. It does seem a little gentle now for a movie that opens with a couple of kids getting slaughtered. Shows that my standards have changed. But I enjoyed it enough. We did it as a pot. Now, it's not very memorable. When I think of it, all I can remember is that opening. I've watched this movie several times. It just doesn't stick in the mind, but parts of it do, and I guess that's more than most movies can say.
Did you say
slashers are like almost my least favorite kind of horror movie, with a few notable exceptions. So the fact that I don't dislike it is a good sign.
I like slashers now, but I will admit most of them are not that great. But I prefer Giallo.
Maybe the best slasher film is Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah,
that's one of the significant ones.
Yeah, the slashers really started with Black Christmas in America. They really started with Mario Bava with
Blood and Black Lace with the
Bay of Blood is more the formula.
Yeah, that's they ripped it off for Friday the 13th Part 2.
Shot by shot for Friday the 13th. I mean, that whole Friday the 13th 1 and 3, the copy of the kills, and then also within Twitch of the Death Nerve or Bay of Blood, the character played by Laura Batty is a medium, and she starts talking about this woman who's obsessed with her son who's died in this lake, and he's going to come back from the dead. And I'm like, gee, isn't that And yeah, so if I were whoever produced that for Mario Bava, I would have sued the fuck out of Sean Cunningham. See, Sean Cunningham had screamed "Twitch of the Death Nerve" in his younger days. So I mean, he there's like it's indisputable that he plagiarized the movie. I mean, it's just like,
well, sure, because Sean Cunningham worked for the Boston distributor Hallmark, which released Mark of the Devil and Last House on the Left, and they released Twitch of the Death Nerve. And Cunningham worked for them, probably worked on the ad campaign, and then appropriated the movie for Friday the 13th.
I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Friday the 13th, but then when I found that out, I was even less of a fan.
I don't think they would have won any lawsuit. I'm not sure you can copyright that sort of stuff. If they wanted to sue somebody, they should have sued themselves for not being able to make Bay of Blood a hit. You know, the fact that it's got 11 different titles tells you something, and what it tells you is they couldn't figure out a way to put asses in the seats for that amazing movie.
But now,
and I've seen some of the ads for it, and I can see why. They didn't know how to sell it.
No, and there was nothing like it. I mean, he had this. Bava had this vision, and of course, movies that are tangential to that are like $5 for an August Moon has a similar kind of setup. I love those movies. I think Bava obviously was doing kind of Agatha Christie like stuff. Damn, man, this is really impressive. Yes, we've got a good brain trust going here. So let's wrap up that era, and we'll get into the Bill era. So, anybody would say anything before we say goodbye for this installment, this exciting episode of Deep Images? Nobody? Okay. Well, please like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And we really need your help, man. If you like the channel, if you dig it, help us out. We're gradually rising, but we're at that plateau, and we need your help. So if you can help brothers and sisters, otherwise, please do it. Thank you. Everybody say good night.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.